There has been, because the native Chesapeake Bay oyster has such low population, is at such a low state, there's been some ideas floated about introducing another species of oyster that might actually be disease resistant, that might not be affected by MSX and Dermo or other diseases that might affect oysters. There is a species from China that has come to light as appears to be disease-free. And so several labs throughout the Mid-Atlantic region from New Jersey through the Carolinas are doing research on this oyster species to see about its survivability in this region.
The quarantine lab at the University of Maryland Horn Point Laboratory is very important because we're able to do replicated studies and experiments in a very controlled atmosphere. This quarantine lab is capable of recycling its water and treating all of our discharge. So that way we can ensure that we're not accidentally introducing the species into the bay. So we can work with diploid oysters and do real-time, real-scale experiments that will hopefully give us a window into what's going to happen when and if they're in the bay. The concerns with introducing a non-native oyster are we're not sure what it's going to bring in with it. We know it's resistant to MSX and Dermo, or at least it has shown resistance to them, but we're not sure if it might bring in a special disease that we don't know about yet. In Mother Nature's eyes, studying it for 3 to 5 years is just a blank.
What we're focusing several research studies on is to try and understand whether the Asian oyster has greater or lesser or the same levels of uptake and depuration or elimination of the pathogens relative to the native oyster. If the rates of uptake and clearing are the same, we probably won't expect an increased health risk from this oyster. If they take up pathogens more and clear them from their systems more slowly, then we could expect people to maybe get sick more frequently eating the Asian oyster than our native. So that's what those human health studies are looking at right now, is specifically how the oyster takes up and clears the pathogens that can cause human disease.
Our research has found that the Asian oyster still appears to be disease resistant. It also has a much longer growing season than does the native oyster. So they actually get quite large rapidly.
The watermen in Maryland are for the introduction of the Asian oyster to some scale because they want to have a market. They still want to have a livelihood and be able to make money. They don't want to give up doing what they love to do something else. But there are some that are very skeptical about it because you are messing with the native oyster.
The regulatory framework for introducing non-native species is sort of patchy. There's clearly state jurisdiction in Chesapeake Bay because Maryland and Virginia have authority over their state waters. There are federal regulations that pertain to things like the Federal Clean Water Act and the Rivers and Harbors Act, which the Army Corps has jurisdiction over. EPA administers the Clean Water Act. So some of the federal regulations could apply here. And so there, at this point, are both federal and state permits and approvals that are needed for the experimental trials that are underway right now. It's going to be a larger policy decision if we decide to actually introduce reproductive non-native oysters on a large scale.